Chapter 10. One more trip, please. Jane and Sam were finishing breakfast the next morning when Maylie and Peter arrived at the farmhouse. It was Jane's last day, and they were all sorry, though not as sorry as Jane, who was in a state, worrying about the adventures she was going to miss out on when she went back to what she now saw clearly was a terribly boring and uneventful life. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Where will you go next? Please, please, please phone me and tell me all about it. I'll try to come up for a long weekend very soon too, as soon as I can." "I don't know," Sam said. "We always take a break between trips. How about going up the hill to see if we can find any of those Stone Age hand axes Grandpa Noel told us about?" He wanted to look for them to feel some connection with his great-grandfather. He was still feeling terrible they had left him behind, even though it was what he'd wanted. "Okay," Peter said, "but please make sure you don't have the stone." "Don't worry, it's safely back in the pond. We won't be making any unexpected trips." "Imagine if you dropped the stone when you went back to the Permian or Jurassic and you got trapped there," Jane said. Peter and Sam looked at her coldly. They did not think this was a nice train of thought to be following. "But where do you think you'll go next?" Jane asked again agitatedly. "Why don't you go to Rome or to ancient Greece? Imagine how exciting that would be." "Yes," Peter said, his eyes shining. "Or we could go and see Vikings or to ancient Egypt." They were walking up the low reaches of the hills they talked and slowed down to start searching for stone tools. "But all our travels have been in the Karoo," Sam said. "We don't actually know if the stone will take us anywhere else." "Well, let's try," Jane begged. "Please, please, please, let's try. We can just try it out, and if it works, we can stay just a short while before anything really happens." "Yes, one thing that Great-Grandpa Noel's shown is that things can go horribly wrong," Sam said. "Is it even safe to use the stone again?" Peter, who was listening thoughtfully and chewing on a soursop, this was the name they had given to the sour, juicy clover stems they loved to chew, said, "I agree that it can be dangerous, but we seem to be using the stone in the right way and we've had no problems yet. Maybe it wanted Grandpa Noel to stay in the Stone Age for some reason. He seemed to think so. I say we use it one more time with Jane." Jane leaped up, her eyes shining. "Oh, goody, good, good. Let's do it now." "But where?" Sam asked nervously. "Let's go back to Roman times," Jane said joyfully. "I know. My Auntie Lee visited a place called Pompei in Italy. It's a ruined Roman city. She said it was absolutely incredible. Let's go back to Pompei when the Romans were living there." "Okay, but just for a few minutes, and we don't want to stand out. We need to go and dress up like Romans first," Sam said, starting to warm to the idea. "Easy," Jane said confidently, petrified they might change their minds. "Romans wore clothes that looked like dresses. They were called togas. We can make some with sheets." "My mother has an old clothes and sheets pile in the laundry cupboard," Sam said. "She uses it for rags and stuff. I'll go and see what I can find." "And we'd better Google what Romans wore in the meantime," Peter said, eager to get a chance to do research on the computer. While Sam went off to raid the cupboard, he Googled, "What did Romans wear?" Lots of pictures of men and women in classic poses dressed in flowing clothes appeared on the screen. They actually wore tunics. Togas are the cloak things draped over the tunics," Peter said. "Shouldn't be too hard. We're all wearing T-shirts. We can just drape and pin the sheets over us. And Maylie and I must put on long skirts or long-sleeve dresses and then put a sheet over that," Jane added excitedly. The next hour was enormous fun. The children had always loved dressing up and putting on plays, but to dress up to go and move unobserved among real Romans took dress up to a whole new level. They used up Mrs. Noel's entire store of safety pins to fasten their sheets, and also surreptitiously removed the tasseled curtain cords from the sitting room curtains to use as belts. They were perfect for gathering the sheets around their waists, and looked, they thought, very smart, very Roman. The Google images suggested that Romans had a strong partiality for leather sandals, and as this formed part of the summer school uniform, this was easily done, with the exception of Jane, who wore her rubber slip-slops. Peter, who had appointed himself head of Roman styling, was not happy and tried to get her to wear her pumps, but Jane refused. "They won't notice they're rubber," she said firmly. "They look like sandals, and anyway, my sheet covers my feet most of the time." The children then consumed an enormous quantity of toasted cheese and milk. They all clearly remembered how hungry they had got during their Stone Age trip and didn't want that to happen again. Lucky Mum and Auntie are out, Sam said. They'd wonder why we're eating lunch so early. Let's clear up quickly, then we can go. My tummy is sore, Maylie complained. Mine too, Jane said, and I feel a bit sick. Well, you did both eat 2 huge toasties and drink a gallon of milk, Sam said unsympathetically. He was worried his mother would be cross about the massive amount of cheese, bread and milk that had been consumed. Come on, let's go now, he said nervously. He wanted to get them and the sheets and the curtain cords out of the house before any awkward questions could be asked. They trooped out of the house and headed for the pond. On the way, they passed Mr. Nell, who was talking loudly and angrily on his cell phone to someone who kept not delivering the spare parts for the tractor. He was in angry mid-sentence when he looked up and stopped abruptly, giving the tractor parts man time to say hastily, I'll bring them on Friday, goodbye, and put the phone down before Mr. Noel got a chance to tell him how small his chances of survival would be if he failed to keep his promise. For a second, he thought he was seeing ghosts, but then he saw it was the children, boys included, all wearing white dresses and standing around the fish pond. What was happening to Sam this holiday? He watched the children turn and head away from the farm towards the hill. What on earth could they be doing walking through the bush in that get-up? The children were hugely excited and sped up the hill, despite the heaviness of their early lunch. Once in the privacy of the hilltop, they looked at each other with anticipation. Okay, Sam said, fingering the stone where it lay deep in his pocket and holding out his hand to Jane. Let's hold hands and I'll make the wish. They held hands tightly and Sam said loudly and firmly, I wish we 4 were all in the Roman town of Pompei when the Romans were living there. Please join us next week for Chapter 11, Laughing Too Loud in Pompei.